We're going to look at HTML, CSS, and mobile. And let's step through this piece at a time because I'm not 100% up to speed with this. And I put it all together and I taught it once, and then it's been 6 months. So we'll just kind of put together everything here together. So mobile devices, mobile history, and font boosting. So there's this thing known as font boosting in mobile devices that some mobile devices do. And we want to understand font boosting, and then we also want to understand Meta Viewport and what Meta Viewport does. And so that's kind of what this little description here says. And so first we're going to go and take a look at the code 041 mobile. 041 mobile, default rendering. So let's open this up. And so lorem ipsum, blah, blah, blah. And then the CSS, and then we have a README. To attempt to provide the best experience, mobile browsers will render the page at a desktop screen width, usually about 980 pixels, though this varies across devices, and then try to make the content look better by increasing font sizes and scaling the content to fit the screen. For users, this means that font sizes may appear inconsistently, and they have to double tap or pinch to zoom in order to see and interact with content. So you remember old like mobile websites, you had to zoom in, and you still come across those, right? How many people have seen one of those recently? Where you have to like, oh, let me zoom in and look at what, okay, zoom back out, scroll down, zoom in, right? And so one of the things that mobile phones, mobile devices did was like, hey, we're just going to take this entire web page and fit it into this viewport, this screen, and we'll increase the font sizes so it's a little bit more readable so you don't have to scale in on it. And so that's what that's telling us here. Here we have font size 1M for this here, and let's just take a look. And so there's font size 1M. And if we look at this on mobile, I launched developer tools down here, and then we have this little mobile button right there. And if I click that, that's what it looks like on the iPhone 6. On Nexus 5X, looks like that. All right, so nothing extraordinary. Default rendering, that's what that is, default rendering. And now we're going to look at font boosting and see what's different. So then we still have some lorem ipsum, and we have some the same CSS, font size 1M. And I'm going to pop this open and then look at this on mobile and see if we get font boosting. So maybe this is font boosting occurring. It still looks pretty small. Doesn't look like they made it bigger for me to read. But we'll continue to explore this and see what we come across. So now this next one is disable font boosting. So there's index, same text, and to attempt, and then that thing we've already seen. And then here we're going to go to main CSS, split vertically, and here's some wacky code to disable font boosting. Don't know why that works. Max height, massive amount of pixels, and then WebKit text size adjust 100%, text size adjust none, font size. Let's see what this looks like, and we'll look at it on mobile. So you see how that boosted the fonts, right? And when we disabled font boosting, that's what it really looked like when it crammed it into that small screen. So it took this page, right? Took this page here, where it looks like that, and it jammed all of this whole size down onto this screen and made the text bigger. And if we didn't have all of the text bigger, that's what it'd look like, jammed down onto that screen. This big screen here, jammed down onto this screen, but with font boosting, it looks like that. And so, you know, this is just totally hacky, crappy looking code. We don't want to do that, right? Like, I don't know if I've ever seen that. Other than to teach or kind of demonstrate this example. So what else can we do? How do we take care of it? How do we make mobile look good? There's this thing called Meta Viewport. And in Gogland, however you say it, right, it'll automatically pop in when I create a page. Like if I created a new page and deleted all this, and then did exclamation point, it added meta name viewport content width equals device width, User scalable is equal to no. Initial scale 1, maximum scale 1, minimum scale 1. What does that all mean? All right. I'm going to get rid of, I guess we'll leave temp there. Here I have meta viewport, and that's the name, the meta tag. The meta tag's name is viewport. The attribute name is set to the value viewport. Content width is equal to device width, initial scale 1. So the one that automatically got created was, and content width equals device width equals device width, that's the same. And initial scale equals 1, initial scale equals 1. They did 1, 0 with maximum scale and minimum scale also. So when we do that, what happens? So there's index, here's main CSS, just a little bit of reset there, nothing big, nothing really different. Font size 1. I bring this up, looks like that on desktop, and looks like this on mobile. And so here was without any meta viewport and font boosting disabled with font boosting, right? Here is with meta viewport. So there we had 2 paragraphs. Here we just have 1 paragraph, but the same thing. So it looks pretty similar. Font boosting and meta viewport, they look pretty similar, yeah? I mean, about the same size text, right? This one actually looks a little bit darker, a little bit easier to read. So let's continue to explore this and see what we learn. And get rid of that. So meta viewport Google, not set. So we just have a checker graphic like that, and we have a page here with some stuff on it, and then let's look at the CSS. So HTML body, article, paragraph, we have a reset, padding, border, margin, box sizing, and then we disable font boosting, and then we have body, margin top, background image is the checker, and we have article, and the width is 100, color, background color, padding, and color. And viewport not set, so no viewport set. This page does not have the meta viewport set. The width of this page, to attempt to provide the best experience, mobile browsers will render the page at a desktop screen width, usually 900 pixels. This is the test to show the code this is a test to show how the meta viewport tag affects a page. Each box in the background is 50 pixels wide. So there it is, and we look at it on mobile. Each box is 50 pixels wide, and so we have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. That's about 980, right? And there's no font boosting on that because we had this thing here. So that's just, no font boosting and no viewport. It just took my screen, and the mobile device took my screen and said, we're going to take this entire screen and put it onto something 980 pixels wide. So let's keep going and look at the next one. So now we have set, same checker box, and now the difference is here we're not disabling font boosting. So font boosting is not disabled. Before we had it disabled, and we disabled it with that code right there. That's what we had before. But now we have meta viewport, width equals device width, initial scale 1. So our goal is to understand that here, what that means, instead of it just being some magic line of code. What do each of those attribute values do? And so now I'm going to launch this page and look at it on mobile, and we have 100, 200, 300, 400, 4 1/4. Right? So the viewport is set. This page does have the meta viewport set. The width on this page matches the device independent pixels of the device. This is a test to show how the meta viewport tag affects a page. Note each box in the background is 50 pixels. So before we had 980. Now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 20. It's just kind of interesting. We're just learning how do mobile phones deal with web pages, and how do we work with them in the best way. And we saw a new thing here, device independent pixels. Device independent pixels. So when we talk about pixels in mobile phones, there are the number of pixels that are in a mobile phone. And so we could look right here, and we could see this is 412 by 732, right? Nexus 5x. But if I Google that, Nexus 5x resolution, resolution is the number of pixels. It says 1920 by 1080. 1920 by 1080, this says 412, that's 5x. This is 5x. This says 412 by 732. 412 by 732. 412 by 732. 412 by 732. 1920. 412, 7, 19. That's kind of wacky, right? Let's take a look at like iPhone 5. 320 by 568. iPhone 5, maybe we'll come back to that one. iPhone 5 resolution. So the iPhone 5 resolution is 320 by 568. Here it says it's 640 by 1136. 320 times 2 is 640, right? And what's 568 times 2? 568 times 2. 1136. 1136. So this says, hey, I have a resolution of 640 by 1136, but right here it says 320 by 568, and they're getting flipped there. So the actual resolution is twice its display resolution. So you have actual pixels in a device. High retina devices will have actual pixels that are denser than the pixels that are used for display. So 2 pixels are used for display, one display pixel. So you have the actual pixels in a device, and then you have display pixels, like how many, what's the mapping? You know, is it 2 times 2 pixels for every display pixel? And then there's CSS pixels. We'll learn more about this in a second. I just kind of wanted to introduce it. So 1, 2, 3. So that's Meta Viewport is set, and you can see how that changes it. Meta Viewport image, best practices. Use Meta Viewport to control the width and scaling of the browser's viewport. Width is equal to device width. So the width matches the viewport's width to the device's width in device-independent pixels. Initial scale is equal to 1, establishes a 1-to-1 relationship between CSS pixels and device-independent pixels. Ensure your page is accessible by not disabling user scaling. User scalable default is yes. What is responsive? All content responds to changes in viewport size. All content fits within the viewport. Let me see what our notes say, because I'm still trying to convey this and understand it myself. So mobile devices, Meta Viewport width equals device width. The meta tag with the name attribute set to viewport and the content attribute set to width equals device width. What does width device width value do? It sets the width of the viewport equal to the width of the device. Instead of the viewport randomly being set to 980 pixels or some other width, the width of the viewport will now equal the device's width. This results in fonts being displayed at a more legible size. So let's see if that's true. So we have this one here. This is 320, 1, 2, 320. This one is 412, 1, 2, 3, 412, right? Each of those are 50. This is 375, 1, 2, 3, 75. So width of the viewport is equal to the device's width. So whatever the width is of the device, that's going to be the width of the viewport. Instead of the viewport being made 980, I can stick it onto this device, who cares? We're saying no, the width of the viewport is going to be the device width. And then we could design our page to work at that width. We could say, hey, for everything under 500, use this design with a media query. So width equals device width in the viewport tag. Somebody explain it back to me. What is that? In this viewport tag, what does that mean? Somebody explain it back to me. What about the actual number of pixels across the...
That's what that refers to. It's not the pixels that it displays, it's the actual pixels.
Okay, so our viewport is the port through which we view this content that we're building. And mobile phones will just randomly say, this is going to be shown over 980 pixels, and you could just zoom in so you can see the whole page. Right? Because back in the day, people didn't make pages to work well at 400 pixels. However, we can now build pages to work well at 400 pixels. We'll use media queries. And 400 pixels, it should look like this. Right? Or everything under 600, it should look like this. And so we don't want to build something to be under 600 and then have the mobile phone say, show this at 980, and then it serves up our 980 on a small phone. Right? So we say the port through which you view this page, the viewport, the width of that port should be equal to the device width. And that device width is this right here. All right, this is 375 wide. That's 414 wide, 1, 2, 3, 4, 14. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 wide. That's my phone. All right, so that's where width equals device width comes in. So the port through which we view this page, the viewport, the width of it is going to be equal to the device width. That's straightforward, right? Somebody explain it back to me. Just say it back to me, Dominic. Use the words here, man. The ones that are highlighted. Use those words. Do it. Do your best shot. You got it. Yeah, what's that mean to you? I'm going to eat a carrot until you're ready. Start with the port through which we Dominic stalled out. Ann, tell it to me.
The width of the screen is going to depend on like how wide the viewport is. It's going to scale like 100% with the viewport.
The width through which the port through which we view this page, the width of that will be equal to the device width. That's what you need to say. Everybody say it with me. The port through which we view this page, repeat it. One nation under God. The port through which we view this page, the width of it is going to be equal to the device width. Say it now, Dominic, all of it.
The port of this page.
Through which the port
Through which we
view
the
page
is the width equals device.
Say it back to me, Ann.
The port through which we view the page is going to equal to the device width.
The width of that port will be equal to the device width. Say it back to me, Robert.
The width of the port through which we view the page is going to be the same width as the device width.
Perfect. Nathan, say it back to me.
The width through which we view the page is going to be the same as the device width.
Yeah. Steve, say it back to me.
The port through which we view this page will be equal to the device width.
Dominic, say it back to me.
The port in which we view this page will be the same
Yeah. So instead of it just a device randomly taken and saying, look, I'm giving you 980 pixels, in which case, if it said I'm 980 pixels wide, right, then, you know, our page is going to show up as if it's a 980 wide pixel screen, but it's going to be way too small. So we're saying, no, you know, the viewport for, and this is for mobile, right, the viewport for this device, the width of it, the port through which you see this page will be as the device width. So if the device is 312 pixels, that's the width that's the width through the port through which you're viewing this page. If it's 420 pixels, that's the width, right? So that's device width equals device width. And then we have this initial scale. So the initial scale is a mapping of our pixels in CSS, which are these. Our pixels in CSS to the device-independent pixels in the device. And so if that's set to 1, right, then every CSS pixel maps 1-to-1 with the device-independent pixels. Because remember, there's 3 kinds of pixels. It's starting to come back to me. You got your physical pixels, which we saw with the iPhone whatever, 5, right? The physical pixels were 640 by 1136. Right? 640 by 1136. Physical pixels. Device-independent pixels, 320 by 568. That's high retina. High retina, like it's extra crisp, extra clear, because for every pixel that we're using to render an image, it's actually 2 pixels, 2 physical pixels that are giving you really crisp. It's kind of like the difference between, you know, old school like letters, old computer letter. Old computer letters, right? Like they look wonky because there weren't enough dots. It's like they had a square, and there's 2 squares to make the top of that R. 2 squares there. There's a missing square to get that rounded corner. Well, if you had more dots there, you could round that corner. But back in the day, there was only like 1 dot for that area, so it's either on or off. And there's your B, and it looks jagged. You want a crisper resolution, put more dots there. And that's what, like, you know, high retina devices are. Retina devices. It's like more pixels. And so we just say, okay, these physical pixels, there's 2 for every device-independent pixel. So they cram more pixels in. So when we say, hey, use a pixel to show this, they're using 2 pixels to show it. So it's extra crisp. Extra clear. So there's physical pixels, which on that iPhone 5 were 640 by 1136 physical pixels. And then the device-independent pixels, right? In reality, right, even though we've got twice that many pixels here, this resolution is only 320 by 568. So you give us 320 by 568 stuff, and we're going to show it really clear because every pixel that you've used for 320 by 568, we're using 2 to actually show it. Cool. So there's physical pixels, there's device-independent pixels, and there's CSS pixels. And so when we say initial scale 1, every CSS pixel maps directly to 1 physical pixel, or to 1 device-independent pixel, 1-to-1. If we were to change this and say 2, let's see what happens. So let's just make sure we're on this page. So that's this page here. All right, and now let's change that to 2 and launch it again. So we zoomed in exactly 50% more, right? Or whatever. Right? We were only seeing, like, so now for every CSS pixel, we're taking up 2 device-independent pixels, which are taken up on the iPhone 5 4 physical pixels. And so if we have CSS pixels, right, we only have 150, 162. We only have 160 out of 320. Because for each of our CSS pixels, right, we're saying take up two device-independent pixels. And so if I say that something is a CSS, if I say this is 50 wide, right, for each one of the pixels here, like this is supposed to be 320 wide. That's what it was here, 320. 1, 2, 3, 320. So if I say, hey, 320 wide, if I say 160 wide, 160 pixels now takes up 2 device-independent pixels, right, of my CSS pixels. So I could draw a line, maybe. I don't know if this will work.
We need the hashtag in front line.
Thank you. That has 160 pixels. Right, so that's 160 pixels wide. Now I do this, and for every one of my CSS pixels, it's going to take up 2 device-independent pixels. Or I could go 0.5. It gets tweaky. So now, for every one of my CSS pixels, it took up half of a device-independent pixel. So if I say 160 pixels wide, right, that's now only taking up 80. So for every one of mine, it takes up half of a. So if I say 160, it takes up half, which is 80, of device-independent pixels. So mostly what you do is this magic line. You put in this line. But I don't want you just to put it in and say, okay, I've done the magic, woohoo, voodoo, it's going to work better on mobile. I want you to understand why. Because mobile's, if you don't do anything, mobile's going to try to show your web page at 980 pixels or something. Right? And then just let you pinch zoom in to see the whole web page. Well, you don't want to make your web page like that. You don't want to put your 980 pixels on a small device. It's too tight. You don't want people pinching and zooming. So you're going to make your website look good at 400 pixels. You have a media query, say anything under 600, it's going to look like this. Right? And then you'll put this code in and you'll say, look, for mobile devices, and I think Viewport is just like only mobile devices will look at that tag. But Meta Viewport, the port through which we view this page, the width of that port is going to be equal to the device width. So great, my device width is now 312, 412. I'm no longer asking for the page to be displayed on 980. It's going to be displayed on 312 or 412 or whatever. Cool. And the initial scale for each of my CSS pixels, I want to take up 1 device-independent pixel. And the reason they call it a device-independent pixel is because, man, this is 312 by 568. That's the resolution independent of the device. That's the number of pixels independent of the device. The physical pixels on this device are actually twice that. But we're just talking like regular straight resolution. We're not going to, so we show this stuff at 360 by 512. That's like it's, on any device. But on our device, we're actually using twice that many pixels in the background to make it look really crisp instead of janky, old school print, you know, with big squares missing. Who got that? Explain viewport to me, Dominic.
Viewport is how we view the page, view the width and device.
We'll come back to you. All right, Steve, we'll go this way this time. Include initial scale in your explanation. Include this whole deal in your explanation.
So, the viewport, when looking on mobile, there's device-independent pixels and physical pixels. Physical pixels is the actual length of the screen. So, in the initial scale, it's like a ratio of independent pixels to physical pixels if you use initial scale equals 1.
Okay, so you made a mistake there. We have physical pixels. That's how many pixels physically, how many light bulbs are on that screen, really small light bulbs. And then we have device-independent pixels. Those could be 1-to-1, right? Physical to device. So some stuff is like, this resolution is 360 by 560, 312 by 568. What is it? 320 by 568. And there's 320 by 568 physical pixels. Or we can say this resolution is 320 by 568, and there's 640 by 1136 physical pixels. So the physical pixels and device-independent pixels. Then we have CSS pixels. Okay, keep going.
If you change the initial scale, then like if it's equal 1, then device-independent pixels and physical pixels are the same. If you change...
No, CSS pixels and device-independent pixels. Physical on the machine, device-independent, the resolution it's working at. CSS, how many we're saying to take up?
So what's the difference between the physical and CSS pixels?
If initial scale is 1, there is no difference. And so if we say take up 10 pixels, it's taking up 10 device-independent pixels. But if we change physical scale, the initial scale, that allows us to zoom in or zoom out on what's shown on that screen. We don't ever change that, but you can if you want. And that's where you pinched in, right?
Yeah.
And you've zoomed in on something. So if we wanted to have something automatically zoomed in when a page loaded, or disable zooming in, we could disable it. But you have your CSS pixels, which is just like, here are my CSS. I say use 10 pixels or 160 pixels wide. And then how many of the device-independent pixels does that take up? And so if it's 1, then each of my CSS pixels takes up 1 device-independent pixel. If it's 2, each of my CSS pixels takes up 2 device-independent pixels. And that allows us to zoom in and zoom out if we wanted. Try it again, you're getting it.
The initial scale is the ratio of CSS pixels and device-independent pixels.
Yes.
If the value is 1, they're the same. If the value is 2, then 1 CSS pixel equals 2 in the other way around.
No, that's right. I'm
Okay,
cheering you on,
equals
baby.
2 device-independent pixels, and if the value is 3, then it's 3 times, etc.
Yeah. Which means that if we've set something to be 30 pixels and we say initial scale is 1, and we've set our CSS take up 30 pixels, well, and the initial scale is 3, and that's going to take up 90 device-independent pixels. And that's going to use up the screen quicker. Nathan.
So the viewport is 14 is how we view the page to be set to the width of the device
Mm-hmm.
and mobile. And then the scale sets the ratio between the CSS pixels and the device independent pixels to whatever you set it to. So say 0.5 would shrink it down to where it's taking half of a pixel for every device independent pixel.
Right. Good. Robert? Come on, baby, you got it.
Not completely set it yet, though.
Yeah, but just say it anyhow, and I'll help you. Give me your best understanding of it. That's why it took me a while to get this all fired up in my head again. It's been 6 months. I'm like, oh yeah, how's this crap work?
My best understanding is that the device itself has the physical pixels,
Yes.
which is the device width. Within the device infrastructure itself, it portrays things based on its device independent
Yes.
variable.
Yes. Physical pixels, device independent pixels.
And then there's the CSS value for pixels, which is used with initial scale with the independent pixels.
Yes. And that's just us saying how many pixels take up in our CSS. Cool. Anne.
Well, for me, what my understanding is that the initial scale is the ratio between the physical pixel and the CSS pixel.
Okay, yes.
So if you set
No, device independent pixel and CSS pixels, initial scale. We got physical pixels, device independent pixels, CSS pixels, initial scales between CSS and device independent.
I got it mixed up between the physical and the device.
Yes.
So if you set the
No, did I just say physical? Did I get it backwards? No, it's physical, device independent, CSS. Device independent and CSS are the ones for initial scale.
So if you set it to 1, then the CSS pixel, one CSS pixel equal 1 device independent pixel. But if you set it to 2, then it's gonna zoom in, and 1 CSS pixel is gonna take 2 device independent pixels.
Good, great. Dominic?
Initial scale has device pixels and CSS pixels, and viewport is how we view the page, and the width is the length of the whole device, like the device.
Yeah.
The device screen.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically we're saying, hey, the port through which we view this page, the width of that port is going to be equal to the device width. So 312, 412, whatever that device width is. And the initial scales between our CSS pixels and the device independent pixels will be 1 to 1. It's like a lot easier, right? Like the way I just said that, how many people are like, well, okay, I got that. Right? The port through which we view this page, the width of that port is going to be equal to the device width. So instead of being 980 or whatever it wants to make pages, it's going to be 312. And the mapping between the CSS pixels, what we say, something's 20 pixels wide, mapping between CSS pixels and device independent pixels will be 1 to 1. So for every CSS pixel, we'll use 1 device independent pixel. Cool. I think we got it, by George. See if there's any CSS here I want to pop out. Change that. And change that. And let's see if this has anything that enhances our understanding. So there's with a picture, and has font boosting still. Max width 100% on the image. So on mobile it looks like that. And then here with Viewport, we have meta Viewport on this one. We did not on that one. So initial scale 1 to 1. Width of our port through which we view this page should be equal to device width 1, 2, 3, 20. That's 320. So the width of the port through which we view this page is equal to the device width. And the scale is 1 to 1. 1 CSS pixel equals 1 device independent pixel. And this picture here is .500 pixels wide, 500 by 333. So 320, but oh, we put that width on it. Max width 100%. All right, I think you guys understand that now. So when you y'all understand that when you create a page, and you get name viewport width equals device width. You also have user scalable no, so somebody can't scale, zoom in. Initial scale is 1, maximum scale is 1, and minimum scale is 1. So that's really locking it in that this is 1 to 1, our CS pixels to our physical pixels, and you can't zoom in or zoom out on this page. That's a nice chunk of code. Like that makes me wonder if on my website, do we include that to that extent? I don't want people zooming in on my site, but maybe you do want people zooming in on your site so that they could, you know, see if they have accessibility concerns, they could see things larger.